Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, R.E.A. Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Sara Miller. Sara, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Sara Miller, as you just said, and I'm a writer, and I live in Northern California.
So thanks for coming on today. We're going to be talking about a piece that you published in the New York Times a couple weeks ago in the style section. The headline, at least online, the headline is Hate Gen X, Get in Line Behind a Gen Xer. And I thought it was really interesting and funny. And I've wanted to do some generational discourse on the podcast for a while. And you note in the piece that, generational discourse is about as good as like talking about astrology, which, you say you dabble in astrology. So it's, sort of like somewhere between bullshit and something that maybe has something to it.
I
And
actually think astrology might be better than generational discourse.
okay, interesting.
And tarot is definitely better. Way better.
So you are a Gen Xer, and
Yes,
you,
1969.
right. So you're prime Gen X, I would say, and I am a geriatric millennial. I was born in 1983, so we have two two combatants on the generational wars
Yeah.
conversation. What prompted you to write this piece to begin with?
Let me see if I can remember. I did see a tweet months ago from someone on Twitter, and I'm not going to mention their name, that I actually really like. That was, and I really, now I can't remember it. And then I tried to find it and I couldn't, but it was like Gen X, blah, 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 blah. And I remember being like, really, like, what? Like, that's so off base. Then I think I mentioned it to a few people, and then I saw a few more about Gen X, like that they were selfish, and that someone said to me that they pull up the ladder behind them, and I was like, not me. I mean, meaning like, yeah, I didn't feel like I had a ladder to pull up personally.
Uh-huh.
And then also, I mean, I I tend to find, I mean, I find things like this sometimes emotionally compelling, but I don't think it's worth very much. So, I mean, so so the, so I'll back up just and just say yes. I was seeing people insult Gen X in ways that I had kind of seen them insult Boomers, and I was like, this is really weird. And then also, like, I kind of noticed that I didn't have the impulse to respond like in the sort of typical, and again, there's obviously, I it's funny to like talk about generations, but also to think it's kind of bullshit. Like, I am kind of I guess I would say that I'm a Marxist and like a historical materialist. So like, I think that if you like, as far as like facts about generational conversation, I would definitely say, and I had a lot more about this in my story that was cut out by the New York Times. What a surprise. But then the, Marxist rag that it is, about how it's really a way to I think generations are really a way to avoid talking about class, and also about race, because anyway, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But so I sort of wrote it like, and then I sort of had the funny, I saw those tweets. I saw, I saw other articles that were, oh, this is why Generation X is terrible, which I didn't identify with at all. And then I was like laughing at how funny it was. And I was kind of thinking, oh, good luck, like getting Gen X to respond the way that Boomers respond, because they just don't have the same affect
Hmm.
as Boomers. Like, again, generally speaking. So that's kind of what prompted me to pitch the story. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. And
Okay.
there's lots of threads we can pursue here. Yeah. So one is it's interesting that you brought Marxism and materialism into it, because it made me think, is a generational thing. It's sort of like knowing nothing about philosophy whatsoever. It's kind of a like zeitgeist or Hegelian idea of sort of like there's different ideas that like come in and out, and it's not a material thing. It's sort of like, if you're Gen X, you represent this. And yeah,
Right.
it aligns class, and then it's mostly about white Americans. Um,
Right. Like the movie Reality Bites, for example, and that this was also stuff like this was in my story too, I think before. And I don't want to like talk shit about the New York Times specifically in their editing because I should have I mean I way overwrote the story and I was like they'll carve a little statue out of this that fits their whatever. And um actually I wrote a story for them a couple weeks before that about not having kids, which I actually wrote very much just like in the New York Times style, and it was barely edited at all. And this one was just like a giant sort of disaster of like a blog post slash like an N+1 article, but I was just like, no, like I'm way too basic for N+1. So
but N
plus I
plus
don't know
one
any.
is the Gen X intellectual journal, so that
Is
would have
it?
been
Yeah, that would
perfect.
never. They'd just be like, "What?" And so I sent it, and I was like, "Plus, I don't know anyone there," so I sent it to the New York Times, and also they probably don't pay as well, which is really, kind of, uh, but, oh, I Reality Bites came out in 1994, but and that's the quintessential Gen X movie, right? Reality
Right.
Bites.
Yeah.
But so did Boys in the Hood. But Boys in the Hood isn't the quintessential Gen X movie, right? Because it's about like making quotes like being black, right? But it might be it's like it's just the fact that Reality Bites is the standard for what Gen X is sort of shows you how it's really about I mean not entirely but it's really sort of about white sort of middle class people.
Um, did you read the Chuck Klosterman's book, The '90s?
I did not. And then I also have a friend who I was talking to about this thing who was like, if you read the Chuck Klosterman book, The '90s, I will never talk to you again.
Okay,
Because
that's
they
interesting.
hate Chuck Klosterman. So I just think it's really funny. I'd never actually I'd never heard of it.
Okay,
So no, I didn't read it.
I'm not a. I've read like one or two of his previous books. I'm not a Klosterman completist, but I read a positive review of it. I read it. I really liked it a lot. I mean, it's mostly about things that I remember from being,
Mm,
like 8 to 13 years old, like
mhm,
the O.J. Simpson trial and
mhm.
uh, Garth Brooks. So, but it
Right.
also he talks about Reality Bites a lot, and
Uh-huh.
I've never seen Reality Bites, or I thought maybe I saw it years and years ago, like as a teenager, and didn't really remember it. But I guess he has this interesting ideas about how only Gen X is the only generation in which selling out was a bad thing, and every other generation is happy to sell out. And why was this the case? But I guess in Reality Bites, Winona Ryder has to decide between the Ethan Hawke dirtbag character and the Ben Stiller sort of like quasi yuppie character,
Yeah.
and it's so obvious that from maybe from today's perspective, and this is Klosterman's reading, that Ethan Hawke is just a total disaster. It's like you should be rooting for him at all, but somehow in 1994, everyone was like, "Yeah, you got to go with Ethan Hawke. He's the one." But anyway, there's a lot of it. I did like that book, but it's sort of about the years in which Gen X came of age, in which I was, as an Gen X
Yeah, yeah.
millennial, a little too young to participate in, but maybe was like vaguely aware of. But yeah, I mean, these delineations are sort of fake. It is overwhelmingly about white people. And then mostly whenever you talk about anything with generations, it comes down to like popular culture. Then it's mostly popular culture made by an older generation for a younger generation. Like, I mean, Rowdy Bites isn't the case because
Right.
um, it was made by young people, but usually like TV shows that you watch when you're 12 are being made by like 30 or 40-year-olds. So, John Hughes was not Gen X, he was a boomer, etc. So,
Right. Right.
so delineating these things, it's in some ways it's sort of nonsense. But
Well, I think it's interesting. Like there's no doubt a difference between what one age cohort is consuming versus another age group, right? There's no doubt that there's like a difference between that. I think like the part, and then, but of course, what is being produced is not just being produced in some sort of vacuum. It's being produced at like some moment in, in our case, like in the health of, or the sickness of the United States empire, right? So there's going to be different things are going to come to the fore, sort of based on, yeah, like how prosperous the United States is, or
Mhm.
how, so there's that. But then so I think the cultural stuff is obviously like incredibly different. And the I didn't even talk, it's weird. I mean, there's so many things when you write an article that's 1,000 words that you don't talk about. I didn't even talk about technology.
Mhm.
And my partner is actually a geriatric millennial. He's like 3 years older than you are. And like, it's weird because when you start dating someone, if you're a woman and if you're a man and you date someone younger than you, ever, no one says anything. But if you're a woman and you date someone younger than you, mostly what they talk about is like, oh, you're going to be like an old hag and he's going to be young and he's not going to want to have sex with you anymore. Like people like literally say that to your face. Or
Wow.
like, oh my God, doesn't he want kids? Like you're probably going to go through menopause soon. Like people just say that to you and you're like, oh, that's nice.
Wow.
But the thing that's really like weird is the cultural, and we're both like white, we went to college, like middle class, you know, very similar. But the really different thing is like his knowledge of technology. He finds me like very frustrating. He's just like, I don't understand why you can't do this. And then so there, I didn't even talk about technology in my
Uh-huh.
article. But the thing that I see people getting really mad at people about is like there's this idea, and then of course Twitter is Twitter, but it's not just Twitter. There's this idea that all boomers are rich, right? And there's this idea, and then like this idea that like also all like lots of Gen X people are rich, and in fact like boomers do have like a greater share of the income than Gen X people do, and then Gen X people more, I think, more than millennials. Although you sort of wonder like where the billionaires like factor into that and how much of it they have. But anyway,
Right.
I think a lot of the fighting and the anger that I see is about money. And there's this idea that like and some of which is very true, right? There some of which is true, some of which is not. But there's this idea that boomers are all rich, and then Gen X like has a lot more money, and then like millennials are, but then it becomes based on personality. Like because our boomers are like, oh, you guys don't want to work, and the people who do say that, and not all boomers say that, but boomers are Gen X say that, oh, you guys don't want to work, or oh, you don't really, when I put myself through school. It's like, well, okay, when you went to this, state school in your, or not, like when I went to college, it was $16,000 a year. I went to Amherst. The first year was 16, and then when I
Uh-huh.
graduated, it was like 22. I mean, now it's like, I don't know,
I think
some
it's around
ridiculous amount of
80. I
money.
think it's
Yeah,
around 80,000. It gets, yeah,
right.
it's insane. Where, yeah, so a boomer could have
Yeah,
gone, probably could have paid
right. It's
like
a totally different.
three or $4,000 a semester, and you could work.
Yeah, you could put yourself through, like, if I had not had, any, family help, or grew up in Massachusetts, I could have put myself through UMass, like, no problem. Like, I could have, like, gotten a job and put myself through UMass. And, like, UMass was, like, it's a school that had a lot more money back then and probably better facility, just like everywhere else.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't have had to go super deep into debt. So anyway, there's things that people say about the younger generation without thinking about like how things have changed. But then there's also like the younger generation thinks that the older generation is like just mean, or but yeah, but all these things that really have to do with like how healthy the economy is, and like we're in a down, we've been like in a downturn like since like 1973 or whatever, and that becomes attributable to like somehow like all the people that were born in 1950 work really hard, and all the people that were born in 2000 are lazy. Like that's, yeah, but like people talk that way,
Right. Yeah.
and
Oh,
it's
okay. So part of the piece is that like hatred used to be directed against boomers, and now it's starting to be
yeah,
directed against Gen Xers. And I think
right.
Gen Xers hated boomers as well. And so, and now it's,
Yeah,
but now it's sort of
totally.
like younger
Right.
people are lumping in Gen X and boomers in absurd ways, like saying Marilyn Manson was a boomer or
Right.
Kurt Cobain was a boomer,
Right. And that's a good one. Yeah.
or just sort of, anyone over a certain age is all the same. I mean, there's certain, like, if you, as you get older, most people, um, like, if you own a home, that then it appreciates in value, and things like that make sense. And then a lot of boomers are able to buy houses when that was easier to do. So that all makes sense. But it's not just like, older, there's always some conflict between the older and the young. It's sort of like, what are the Gen X specific things that people are mad about? Not just like, oh, those old people, they're out of touch, they have all the money, they don't, they're
Oh, right.
whatever. Like, what about Gen X in particular? And so one of the reasons I want to talk to you is that I've been bashing Gen X on Twitter for a couple
Oh,
years
you
now.
fucking piece of shit. I didn't see that.
I mean, somewhat tongue in cheek, as everything
Oh, wait, do we swear on this podcast?
yeah,
Because I
you
can
can
say
say
something.
whatever you want. So
Okay.
everything I post,
You're a horrible fucking piece of garbage. No, I'm just kidding.
everything I post on Twitter is mostly tongue in cheek. But
I mean, Gen X is really annoying. But
right.
anyway,
But
go
the
ahead.
difference was that when boomers and another group were fighting, the boomers would defend themselves, and you're saying Gen Xers have a lot of self hatred and are like, yeah, we suck. I agree with you, we suck. So that is
But I do see all these. I feel like I just keep interrupting you. But you know what? I'm older than you, and I can't. No, I'm just kidding.
well, you're just a typical Xer
I
who
am.
runs roughshod over the youth,
I
as
do
represented
see
by
though.
me.
I do see Gen X people defending themselves, and like, especially when they say, when we got home from school, our moms and blah blah blah, and there was just a Stouffer's macaroni and cheese, a frozen one, and I had to like eat it with my own dick or whatever, and
So the one that
whatever. It's like,
so
and I'm just like, shut up, like have some have some dignity.
the way people present themselves online is obviously different than reality or
Right.
whatever. But what the one I made
Right.
fun of the most is
Yeah.
drinking water directly from the hose. Somehow,
Oh
multiple
God.
Gen Xers have posted, yeah, and sort of thing like we came, okay, they were the first latchkey kids. Yeah, we came
Right.
home, mom wasn't there, and then we drank water right from the hose. And so,
That's hilarious. I didn't see that one.
I mean, this is like a level two or three down of the main thing. But yeah, just this idea that no, like, kids didn't drink water from the hose anymore.
Right. Right.
There was some purity about that. But okay, but part of it is that Gen Xers, as they've gotten older, are now actually assuming power, and one such person is Elon Musk, who has bought Twitter, rebranded it as X. So he's now one of the most powerful people in the world, and he's an Xer. Do you see that Musk represents Gen X in any way?
Well, I mean, I hate Elon Musk, and he's a he's a fascist, and I absolutely hate him, and I can't, I actually can't deal with like when people are like, yeah, but I'm just like, he's a fascist, like shut the fuck up. So no, I mean, I guess I just don't like, to me, Elon Musk is a billionaire before, like the fact that Elon Musk is a billionaire or that Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire, to me, like defines them. Well, I will say that because Mark Zuckerberg is a millennial, I'll say that he's a millennial and a billionaire. But no, but Elon Musk, I hate Mark Zuckerberg too. I mean, I just like, I hate all of them. But I hate Elon Musk probably, if I had to like pick which one of them I hate more. No, I mean, Elon Musk's Gen Xness doesn't figure for me at all because
Okay,
he's a billionaire. But I'm not saying that he doesn't for other people, but like for me, I just don't.
okay, so I have a theory that a lot of the anti woke stuff is being driven by Gen Xers, and the people who are most
Interesting.
incensed about wokeism or whatever are mostly like Gen X writers.
Right. There actually is some of that, I think.
So people like
Um,
Wesley Yang, Andrew Sullivan. Um,
Andrew Sullivan is a boomer.
is he?
Let's look it up. I wrote to this one guy, I'm not going to say his name, who's very anti-woke, to
Mhm.
ask him about, and I looked him up before, and I think he was born in like 62, and I wrote him, and he's someone who's always like, yeah, he's definitely like, oh, if you're a girl, you're a girl, like your identity, blah blah blah. And so I was like, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about being a boomer And he was like, I'm Gen X. And I was like, well, I don't want to mess with your self-identity as your gender, but
Okay, so
according to this chart, and then
Sullivan is 63. Sullivan is 60 years old, born in 1963. So that's cusp.
Okay, well, if he likes,
he's also from England, so that's a little bit different, because this is
right. No,
we think
definitely.
about this in the American sense.
A friend of mine, I don't think he'll mind.
Pamela Paul. What? Does the name Pamela Paul
Pamela
ring a bell?
Paul is younger than I am. I think she was born in 1972 or 71 or 74.
So she's Gen X, and I can say she's sort of like the Gen Xer in media.
That's so funny,
media type,
right? But
scolding media type.
There were, at my liberal arts school, there were like the people in my class, half the people in my class, like we did not deal with, right? Because they were just conservative, like assholes. Like I just didn't deal with those people. And I'm assuming that's like who Pamela Paul is, right? Like I guess those people are the same generation as me, but I just don't think of them as like having anything to do with me. I don't know. And I'm not friends with any people like that. So, I mean, I don't Pamela Paul, like, I don't know, like Pamela Paul, like that's her problem. I mean, well, it's not, it's everyone else's problem.
That's all of our, Pamela Paul is all of our problems, but no, to me, she's a bad Gen Xer.
So but that's what Gen X is to you. Cause Gen X to me is like, I don't know. Gen X to me is like, well, like that would be the good part of Gen X. I mean, okay. Me and my friends. No, I mean, no, it's like the people that I know that Gen X to me is the people that I know that are between 47 and 55, unless they like the Ramones, in which case they can be older than I actually wrote this friend of mine was like, he's a little bit older than officially Gen X. And he was like, you can be a little bit older than Gen X if you were into punk rock.
Okay.
But I can guarantee you that, Andrew Sullivan and the guy that I talked to who said that he was Gen X, and I was like, LOL. I was like, I love that for you. No. I can guarantee you that they did not like the Ramones.
Okay, maybe that's the real. Okay,
but no, Pamela Paul is a good but Pamela Paul is a good example. I mean, so anyway, let me ask. So that to you is like Gen X is like, oh, Pamela Paul.
I mean, Gen X.
I mean, that's fair
in its media incarnation. I mean, I think I've joked that the Atlantic magazine alternately publishes every article is either flattering Gen X prejudices or making Gen Xers mad on purpose. Like that sort of, everything is like, what is happening on college campuses today? Yes, the Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlantic is like.
So Jeffrey Goldberg runs the Atlantic. I assume he's Gen X.
To me.
So anyway, the baby boomers are aging into retirement, and a lot of old people are hanging around and not giving up their jobs in a way that decades ago wouldn't have happened.
Right.
But Gen Xers are coming into some form of power culturally. I mean, I bet the editors of a lot of the top magazines are now Gen Xers because the boomers have been pushed out or retired.
Is that true? I feel like a lot of them are millennials.
Who are actually
I don't know. I feel like my experience was I used to write for magazines. Like I wrote actual print words. And in like 2008, my phone stopped ringing and I went from making like a decent living to making literally nothing. And I had to totally rebuild my entire, and I don't mean like poor me. I'm just like, whatever. I would never really say that about myself, but like at the time I would have, but not now. Except for sometimes. But I had to totally rebuild my career, and every single person who I worked for was like 15 years younger than me. Like that was my experience. Whereas like when I was in print, like I was working for people that were older than me. And then that just died, I mean, it didn't, unless you were famous, it kind of died. Like I wasn't famous. I was just like working.
Right.
But like I was, I was trying to write for, I don't know, like I was writing for like The All and like Jezebel and just trying to like get, and everyone I was working for was like not only a millennial, but maybe like even a young millennial.
That's interesting. I mean, I think of
and I had people telling me things like, you can't say anything bad. Like one time I said something like, I don't really like this Beyonce song. And they were like, you cannot say that. And I was like, and actually I was glad that I didn't. He was just like, you'll just get in so much trouble.
Oh yeah. I mean,
But I didn't know. I mean,
there's
I
growing
didn't
up
know.
online, and that's part of it.
Right.
And the Gen Xers were sort of the last people who grew up before like everyone had a computer in the home
Right.
and had AOL
Right.
or
Right.
something.
Right.
So
Right.
actually,
Right.
I think of Gawker and the Jezebel and other sites like that as Gen X things. Um, so I'm looking some things up as we're talking. Nick Denton was also British, born in
Well, but he
1966.
was but he's the boss of Gawker. Like I wasn't working for him. I was working for like Gia Tolentino and
Okay, right.
and
Elder Millennial, I
Emma
believe.
and well
But
Corey's
sort of
like
like with
I
that
mean, I wasn't
attitude.
working. I mean, these people were like, I mean,
The
it's not like
Gawker.
there's not real money involved, but I'm trying to think of like who
But do you
I
think
was
the
working
Gawker
for.
attitude is a Gen X attitude? I mean, and Gawker has now, died because of Peter Thiel's lawsuit, then was revived under
I
Leah
mean,
Finnegan, and then died once again.
oh yeah, Leah Finnegan, another person I was like working for, not working for, but like, yeah, I was like being edited by all these people and I don't dislike any of these people. I'm just saying like, I was just like, holy shit. Like, I'm just like, I just feel like, like grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last job, my boss was like, I had a boss that was in my age and then he ish, a little bit younger. And then I had a boss who was like 34 and I was like, yeah, thanks. Bye. But do I think that Gawker had a Gen X sensibility? No, it seemed to me like elder millennial, I think. Like just very, I mean, I guess it was like sarcastic and whatever, but it was like very, very like online. And then I don't know.
So, I mean, part of
I've
this is older, the older part of the generation versus the younger part of the generation. And, I'm on the older end of millennials. Like someone who's
right.
like 28 is still a millennial. I have less in
Right.
common
No,
with
I would
them
say,
than someone who's
yeah.
45 and
Well,
a younger Gen Xer.
Right. There's this sort of like post irony thing. Like something I think is very Gen X is to say like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill myself.
Uh-huh.
Like they just say that all the time. And like, I was talking to a friend of mine. Actually, I don't think he'll mind if I mention his name. And he's not my friend. He's like someone that I was corresponding with because he worked at Jezebel. And then I still listen to Who Weekly. I was talking to Bobby Finger and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. And he was like, don't say that. And actually, I should add, I mean, maybe he knows someone who killed himself. So I feel bad. Maybe we should just say, I have a friend who is a millennial. And I kept, every time I use the expression, I'm going to kill myself. Also, my boyfriend hates it when I say I'm going to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, that is nothing. That is just like, that is a throwaway. Or also, but to be honest, I feel like I'm just like, well, haven't you ever thought about killing yourself? To like millennials and like, no, I would never think about that. And I'm like, really? Like, really,
well,
never?
That's interesting. Okay, so there are some.
It's like it's such a big deal to think about killing yourself. I'm like, that's just life. That's just a normal day.
Yeah, obviously there's the most famous Gen X suicide would be Kurt Cobain.
Right. Right. I mean, people do. I'm not saying it's good when they actually do.
Right.
It,
this podcast is officially anti-suicide. That's our position.
Yes.
But the conversation around
it's
interesting. The conversation around suicide has changed in the past 8 to 10 years. Something changed where if there's an article about someone who kills himself, it puts the helpline, the lifeline phone number at the bottom of the article. That didn't used to be a thing. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's some sort of cultural change. David Foster Wallace is technically a boomer, but he was one of the most prominent writers associated with Gen X, and he obviously killed himself. Are there prominent millennial suicides? There's obviously overdose and stuff, but no one is particularly. Aaron Swartz, maybe. That if you remember that poor guy, he killed himself. But
and then like the guy that just died that was on God, what's the show that's on HBO? Euphoria. I mean, but that was a drug overdose. I feel like there's a lot of like younger millennial drug overdose / possible suicide type things. It's not that I think suicide is hilarious. I guess I don't. I guess it's just like, I feel like it's a difference to sort of joke about the idea of like that you would kill yourself versus like.
What does the phrase teen suicide, don't do it mean to you?
Yeah, like nothing.
Okay, well, isn't that from Heather's?
Oh, is it? I don't remember. I mean, I saw Heather's like 3 times. Is it from that makes I mean, that makes sense, yeah.
I mean, they turned suicide into this huge joke.
Right. No, totally.
And
Yeah.
they, they
Like
murder
why'd you have
people.
to kill my it's like my hot gay son or
Yes,
something like
exactly.
there's like why'd
Okay,
you have to
so
kill such hot snatch? And then he's like, I love my dead gay son. Right. No, totally. Right.
yes, I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
my
yeah.
dead gay son. So if you Google
Right.
teen
Right.
suicide, don't do
Right.
it. First thing you get is help is available. Speak with someone today
Uh-huh.
with the suicide crisis line. So that's obviously some sort of technological and cultural change. But yes, big fun. Teenage suicide,
Oh,
don't
right.
do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so so suicide was a joke. I mean, there's the version of suicides written by a Gen X writer, Jeffrey Eugenides. We're in a weird
I
cul-de-sac
bet
here.
he's actually a boomer.
Okay, let's look it up.
Look it up. He might not be.
I think he's cusp. But so another difference is political, and it seemed like Gen X was definitely more conservative politically overall than millennials and younger, and maybe even more conservative than boomers in the last election, according to some measurements. Do you? So these are the bad Gen Xers, not the good ones. But how do you? I mean, do you think it's just as you age and acquire property and stuff and care more about paying taxes, maybe you become more conservative, or do you think
Well, yeah, I mean, I've definitely
coming of age during
I've seen
Reagan?
that happen with a lot of people. And actually, I don't know that I would have become a Marxist if I hadn't like lost my house and like my entire livelihood when I was 40 or 38 and then
Mhm.
like rebuilt it and with like half as much money as I had before, which wasn't even a lot, but like I went from being like a solid earner to like being like basically broke all the time, but like grateful that I even have any money at all.
Mhm.
So but I do, I mean, I think that's just like textbook that when people get money and security, they often become more conservative. But I
Mhm.
also, I mean, I will warn you that I don't I honestly, and I don't mean this in in a like a libertarian way, but I guess I don't I just have to say like I don't really see that much of a difference between liberals and conservatives.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think like liberals want gay marriage and like abortion, but I don't think that they like are terribly concerned. Like I don't see most people like super, super concerned about the fact that, the United States is like a murderous, like hegemonic power that, you know what I mean? So I just feel like to me, yeah, maybe people have become like more conservative, but even if they're still like Democrats or liberals, I feel like they're very much about like my kids' school. Where are my kids going to school? Is my kid going to be allowed to like, have what they need
Mhm.
if whether they're trans or, gay or getting an education or if they need like special help in school, but they like people are very, I think like I don't I think like but all those people are like very individualistic. So mostly it's like
Mhm. Well, what I've also wondered whether this whole sort of quote unquote parents' rights agenda slash movement that like Ron DeSantis would be the main who is who is Gen X, but like as young as
mm.
youngest part of Gen X. And side note, Jeffrey Eugenides is a boomer, born in 1960, so you're right about that. Um,
I knew it. No, I'm just kidding.
but yeah, this
Gen
whole
X's are really know-it-all. Don't you kind of think they are?
it's true. But no, this whole thing of like moral panics about what's being taught in middle schools in general,
Mm.
and then a lot of it is about gay or trans things, and it's like the school's going to turn your kid trans is the panic, but just
I
also
see
like
that in a
1619
lot of
project and other stuff. I mean, the people who have kids who are now in middle or high school are Gen X and millennials. um the coding of it seems more like they're appealing to Gen Xers who are like fighting with their middle schoolers who maybe have an identity that they don't agree with or something, or are much more liberal than they are, and so they want a particular book tossed out, or
Well,
something
I
like
think
that.
yeah, I see like again, I don't know everybody I know is either like most of the people I know are like liberal Gen X people. Or I know a lot of younger people for reasons I won't get into. Partly because I don't have children, so I do. But I do. Let's just say, like, I know. Let's just say, take my word for it. I know a lot of liberal white Gen X people that have kids, and I do see at the periphery of the people I know. I do see some trans panic. And I mean, I feel like it's because they have kids that are, I want to be careful about the way that I say this. So I mean, I feel like it's just because they have, I don't know that Gen X people are more transphobic than boomers. I guess it's just that it's like an issue that they're dealing with. I don't want to say it's an issue that they're dealing with.
No, I see what you mean. If you, coming out, a child or teen or something who comes out as trans, the parent is probably Gen X or older millennial at this point.
Right. So I mean, what do you mean about like, and I find it very strange because they act like everyone in their kids' school is like, I'm like, I do not think like, if there are 300 kids or 100 kids in your kids' class, they act like every single one of them is transitioning. And I'm like, I really find that hard to believe. Like, I mean, I wouldn't care if every single one of them were, I would be absolutely delighted, but like, I just don't, it's like, I don't know. I personally know, like, out of the hundreds of kids that I like know or am aware of, I just like know a handful that are, teenagers that are like transitioning. So I'm like, you're acting like your kid's entire class is transitioning just because like 4 of them or 10 of them or whatever want to be called they or like wear a dress. I don't, I don't know. And also like, yeah, again, I wouldn't care if they were, but I just think it's like, because they're the age where this is, happening. And I'm like, also, I'm pretty bad at sort of, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm really bad at trends, like, since I write about them, but I don't really, I'm not like electorally minded at all. I don't really follow that at all. Like people like DeSantis, I'm like, I kind of know who he is. I just don't give a shit about that stuff. Like, I feel like plenty of people do. Like so, and yeah, so I feel like I don't know. I guess I just, when I see people doing stuff like that, I'm not like Gen X, boomer. I'm like, oh, that guy's conservative asshole. Or like that guy's like, like a lib, whatever. Like, and they're just like all the same to me, like Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden are like, they're just like the same thing to me in my head, except like one of them like has better like collagen production or whatever, but like that's kind of it for me.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting because, Buttigieg is millennial. I think he's a year older than I am. And,
he's such a dork.
A lot
he's
of
like such a like typical millennial dork. He's like the worst.
He's like the striver. Yeah. The Kamala Harris is Gen X.
Right.
And so there's some possibility that we'll have a Gen X president soon. Obama is a boomer, but he sort of pitched himself as a generational rejection of the boomers. And obviously the fact that he's not white and that he grew up also in Hawaii maybe changes some of this a little bit. But, he pitched himself as like the campus battles of the 60s that like lingered on for 40, 50 years. Like we're pushing that aside. Like we don't care about, Bill Clinton versus Newt Gingrich and that they fought these types were fighting each other in 1969 in college. But then we ended up going with the next 2 presidents were not boomers, or if Trump is, he's barely, but Biden is not. And yeah, I don't know where
Biden's not a boomer. He's older than a boomer.
He is not a boomer. He was born, I think, in 1943. And
my parents aren't boomers either. They're like
right. Okay. Well, this is
born in 38.
This is a great transition because I was thinking about so Biden, not a boomer.
You're like, this is a great transition. Maybe we can actually talk about generations instead of you just being like, I hate Democrats and Republicans. Okay. I hate them all.
Okay. So the greatest generation that so called, who the people where the men fought
Right.
in World War II mostly, they gave birth to the boomers, and then
Right.
the boomers largely gave birth to the millennials.
Right.
The silent generation, who are the
Right.
people who were born
Right. It's like 35 to like 44 or something like 30, 42.
28 to 45 is one stat I saw. So
Oh,
basically,
okay.
these people were too young to serve in World War II, but maybe the men served in Korea, but they would have been too
Yeah.
old for Vietnam. So they're largely the parents of Gen X, and then
Yeah.
Gen X is largely the parents of Gen Z. And
Right.
so, like, what are the connections between here? So, like, Biden himself is silent generation. His son Hunter Biden is Gen X. He's maybe one of the most prominent Gen Xers on the national stage right now.
The way that I identify with Hunter Biden is that like we both like love partying.
Right.
Like I think Hunter Biden's like horrible and obviously, but I'm just like, oh yeah, that guy Gen X, like yeah, he likes to
Yeah, he knows how to
I
party.
get it. He knows how to
Um,
party.
and so I was having a similar conversation to this. We're talking about generations with someone who's about your age once, and he was like, you know, all the boomer, like, he's Gen X, so he's like, yeah, all the boomer bullshit. I can't believe like it all came back with the millennials, like caring about your feelings and all this stuff. But it's like, well, the boomers are our parents, like, their values leak down to us, and then so like Gen Z, which is this inchoate group right now, it's
Mm.
not there are people still in like middle school who are Gen Z, like they're mostly like their parents are Gen Xers.
I find millennials. I mean, I say that I don't care about generations, but I think millennials are so fucking annoying. Like they're
Well,
just
of course
the
you
worst.
do. You're a Gen Xer.
Especially like women in their late 30s. I'm just like, please shut up. Like I'm just like, you're a child. Like, and I mean like, I have plenty of women friends, but they're just like, oh my kids. Yeah, like my babies. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die. But I do find, or in their early 40s, like yeah, elder, yeah. And I have lots of friends from different whatever. Oh, and I mean, I have a friend, my friend Sara Hagee, or I think it's Hagee.
You quote in the piece.
Yeah, she was like, Gen X are so annoying, they think they're cool. I was like, yeah, that's I was like, point taken.
Okay, yeah, so let me just read this quote because it's a great quote. Yeah, Sara
It's
Hagee,
so funny.
She says, boomers know they're lame, but Gen X are lame and think they're cool.
I was like, that's the first time I really identified as something that someone said. Because I'm always walking around like, I'm cool. And then I'm like, you're old. Like, I'm just saying to myself, like, I'm walking around like, I'm just like, oh yeah. And I'm just like, you're just old. Like, and also when it was like, they're like, oh, we just think of you as boomers. I was like, oh yeah, I might as well just be a boomer. Like, who cares? It's just, But I do want to say about millennials, I'm an extremely emotional person. I definitely I like to process things to a certain degree. But the thing that drives me crazy about millennials isn't that they have feelings or whatever, because I do find them a little robotic, but that they're really worried about being seen as being good people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't quite put my finger on it because it's just like, they're just really like, they want to be virtuous and they want to be like seen as generous. And like, I find their whole kind of the way that they are about, racism, homophobia, sexism. I find the way that they are about that like more performative than like actually political often. Like, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's very, and I don't mean performative like, I am not like I don't want to be like an anti-woke person or even like use the word woke, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that word is like racist and like really offensive. I don't mean I don't mean I
Yes, I know
yeah,
what you mean.
you know what I'm trying to say. So, but like I do find like millennials very performative about being good people, and it
Mm-hmm.
really drives me crazy. And I think that boomers maybe are that way, whereas like my parents, because I have a lot of friends whose parents are boomers, right? Like my parents are older and their parents were older, and like my parents had me, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like it's a years of people having kids when they're somewhat old. So like most of my friends' parents were boomers when I
Mm-hmm.
was growing up. And my parents are definitely like held their feelings like more close to the chest. Also like pre like rock music, I think, which is like a lot of feelings, right? So I think a lot of
Hmm.
boomers are trained in like I mean, my parents did listen. We had like the Eagles and disco tapes in our car and stuff. But my parents are not like, I don't know. My parents aren't like sitting around like listening to like. I feel like Jim Croce sort of like made a lot of stuff like that. Like made boomers really weird, and then then their kids listen to like Sufjan Stevens or whatever. I don't even know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I
Uh-huh.
just feel like they're a little like I liked a little more real emotion and a little less performative emotion from like I find that way with I feel that way like socially with millennials.
So, you know, there was a aesthetic that came of age with social media and especially Instagram, where millennials would take a perfectly composed selfie or take a photo of the lunch they made for themselves that looks really pretty and like symmetrical and stuff. And that was the vibe for someone at the time. And then apparently, Gen Z likes more chaotic, messy stuff and things that are more real and not like this
Gen
is
Z is funny.
obviously composed for
They make
yeah
way
for
better
public
jokes.
for public for public presentation. So there's that. So
Yeah,
next,
I think of millennials as like taking pictures of their food or being like talking
yes.
about like I had a really healthy dinner, like or like yeah, I don't know. They're all like really like I'm sober now, and I'm like you're not an alcoholic. Like,
Okay, that's
and I
interesting.
think getting sober is great if you're an alcoholic. And
Uh-huh.
do I drink too much? Yes, I do. But like, still, I just see. I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just
Okay,
like,
well,
so you're a good person.
if a
Like,
Gen
that's great. The
Xer
planet continues to melt with
if
your
a Gen
goodness.
Xer at age 30 stopped drinking, they wouldn't make a big social media post about it because that wasn't technologically possible. Whereas now you can be
Right.
like, okay, now my personal brand is, I'm sober,
Right.
I'm doing yoga every day. Like this is my thing. Like that just wasn't possible to like communicate to your social circle um
Right.
before the online world came.
Right.
Um so another mean joke that I've made on Twitter about the difference between Gen X and Boomers is um, Boomers are slightly better because at least they believed in something,
Ugh.
whereas Gen X never did.
Vomit. Somebody said that to me recently. She's like, "Boomers believe in stuff. Gen
No,
X,
well
me, me."
they
I was like, "What do they
believed.
believe in? Like putting an American flag outside their house during
Well,
like a parade, or like that like Kroger should have like bacon on sale on Sundays, or that they like I mean I don't know. Do they believe that like Brzezinski was like a good like politician or something because I don't know because he worked under Carter. I mean, I just like I just think boomers are like I mean, the idea that I don't individual boomers and whatever. I mean, there's plenty of them that are like just fine, but they're like, what did they believe in? Like
I would say they believed in the past. When they were young, they believed in something. I mean, they were either for or against the Vietnam War and for or against, the civil rights movement. And I mean, the people who were in charge of those things were not boomers, but the people who were going to be drafted or were, resisting turning up the draft cards, they were boomers. So they had to believe in something. And yeah, and I mean, the relationship between irony and sincerity is a central does seem like a central theme of Gen X. And
well, I mean, I think boomers believe that you could make America better. And I think Gen X people know that you cannot make America better because America's just fucked up. And the only way that like even if you're like a Gen X person that like, votes and like a lot, is like really into voting and is like, "Oh, I go to voted," or whatever, which I am not. But like even if you're like a pretty straight Gen X person, forget about the conservative Gen X people, like I'm whatever. I don't those people are but like I think liberal Gen X people believe in America less than boomers do because
mhm.
America was shittier when they were born. Right? It's not like boomers are like stupider. I mean, they are, but it's not like they were born stupider than Gen X is. It's just like they had more opportunity, cheaper college, like better ROI on like everything, right? And then Gen X had like that better than other people. But I think Gen X, like, in like 1973 is like when the United States like sort of turned from, I think, being like, what is it, like a commodity uh economy to like a what is it? I'm like I'm like the worst Marxist ever. I can never remember anything. But that's like when we stopped like selling shit and just started like selling,
Like the
money.
financialization
But yes,
of the economy.
thank you. So like that's when we were 5, and then we watched, Reagan and Thatcher and all that stuff. And we were like, oh, like, because before that, it was still sort of like the fumes of New Deal stuff and like the Lyndon Johnson kind of like, putting like little plugs in the dam of the imperial core. And then by the time like we were getting older, that was like falling apart. And we saw, yeah, like the coal mine stuff with Thatcher. If you watch the news, I mean, or you just saw Reagan like cutting, like just slashing everything. And we just, we were like, this, I don't know. I think a lot of people, even if they still have some sort of belief in like making America a better place, they just didn't see like the evidence that that was like an actual desire of these people. Like that they know that, I think that they know like in their hearts that like, capitalism is a destructive force and that the United States is like at the forefront of that destruction. And I think more boomers like don't have that experience. Or, I think like just a greater percentage of boomers don't, because of by virtue of being born at a more prosperous and living through like more prosperous times, like don't have that. And then and then they pass that on to like some of their, like millennial kids, this sort of belief like, oh, if I work really hard, like I'm going to get XYZ, I
Yeah,
mean, I'm like
I would say that's
I'm
definitely,
speaking incredibly generally.
yes. I would say that's definitely an early, like an older millennial thing, is like, if I work hard, I will succeed. And maybe
Yeah.
sort of the slacker vibe of like the late 80s, early 90s. Gen X was a rejection of that. But I guess that probably was also related to like low real estate and rental prices in cities where you could sort of just
No, totally.
pay $400 a month for an apartment or something.
Right. Right. I mean, but we saw all that like die, and but you guys did too. I mean, so when I was 22 and I lived in San Francisco, I lived in an apartment. It was like $400 a month. I mean, part of an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I mean, I'm sure you had the same experience of like, I don't know, when you were 30 or 28, New York was like, well, it's been pretty unaffordable for a while, but yeah, I don't think you didn't when I was in my early 20s, like things were like quite inexpensive, but we saw that change really fast. And
Okay, let's see. We've gone a little bit long, and we've been quite going in all sorts of various directions. Do you think that
I'm still attractive? Yes. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
How do you feel about like not being cool anymore, as happens? I don't know if I ever felt cool.
I'll never stop thinking I'm cool. That's my disease. Oh no, I actually, how do I say, I'm joking. I know that I'm not cool. Like, no, I don't. I still think that I'm cool, but I sort of know that only I think that I'm cool, and I don't think I'm cool all the time. I know that I'm delusional in my thinking. Like, I'm perfectly aware. I'm like sometimes I'll catch myself thinking I'm cool, and I'm like, just remember that you're delusional. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I do, like, I was telling I don't know if this works at all, but I was telling someone the other day, I have a niece who's like very fashionable, and I was asking her about certain things I own and being like, is that thing really just like super lame? And she was like telling me, now I can't remember like what they are, but she was telling me that like things were lame, and like certain things, and not in a mean way. Like I was asking her, like she really didn't want to tell me. And then I was like,
and is this person like a teenager or?
No, she's a Gen Z, a Gen Zer. She was born right before September 11th, the September 11th, not just any September 11th. And anyway, but she was telling me, and I said to someone, yeah, I asked my niece which clothes I had that were not cool. And they were like, anything you want to wear is cool. Like, and I was like, that's not true, actually. Like, we don't, like, there are things that I don't know, right? Like, and I want to ask someone. It doesn't mean I'm going to throw out all my clothes and get new clothes. But I think like part of like not knowing you're cool is like thinking like, why do I think this thing? Is this thing that I think stupid and totally outdated, you
Hmm.
know? And like, do I just assume that I know how things are, but I'm just completely like too old to actually be paying attention to something that I just can't see?
Uh-huh.
So I guess that's kind of the like when you say how like not being cool. I know what you're thinking. You're like, "Wow, that's cool." No, I'm just kidding. Um, but I'm
Well,
like,
you know,
no, I'm just saying
if
like me not being
people who
cool
worry a
is
lot
like
about being cool probably aren't cool, because the true cool people don't even, they don't even think about their coolness level. They're sort of like existing on a plane of coolness, and they're like vibing, as the kids would say. And so they're not
right.
racked by am I cool or not, anxiety. So there's that. But there's also like the things that used to signify coolness were like knowing a lot about some specific like band that no one else had heard of yet, or like
All right, yeah.
being
I
into this
never
type
did
of
that.
fashion that was hard to get and was like cutting edge,
Mm.
and all that sort of
I'm
like the
way too
internet.
basic for that. No, I guess
But
maybe I
the
was like
internet has
never
made like
yeah.
there's no longer like you're the like this is my friend who knows a lot about rock music. Like everyone has access to all information. Like anyone can
Right,
go down
right,
whatever rabbit
totally.
hole. Like knowing, the
Right.
friend who knew the like length of every Beatles track or something. That's all on Wikipedia now. Like that's no
Right.
longer a social signifier. So the internet has made that sort of thing, like it's made it easier, and sort of that secret knowledge sort of thing is no longer, I think at least, is no longer a like social currency.
That's funny. Yeah, I wonder if it is. I mean, I still have friends that know a lot about music or film, and I will ask them stuff because I just don't even necessarily know like the right thing to Google. I don't know. I mean, you can't Google everything. I mean, I ask people questions sometimes and I'm like, and they're like, "Can you Google that?" And I'm like, I wouldn't be fucking asking you if I could Google it. Like, why would I have like
Knowing how
set
I-
myself up to withstand your abuse if I
I've
knew, you know?
I've sort of semi seriously considered whether I should put Googling as a skill on my resume, because I got really good at it at a previous job I worked at where I had to find
Oh.
specific links for articles and stuff. So I got quite good at Googling and could almost always find something pretty quickly.
Whoa.
But
Well, look at you,
yeah, but I don't
Mr.
think
Googler.
that's not actually a marketable skill, being good at Google. It's like being good at
I think it
Microsoft Word or
is.
something. Um, but yeah, but then, probably I think the kids these days, they don't even use Google. They just like go to TikTok or YouTube, and whatever like video they find there. If they think maybe the Titanic was a hoax or something, then they find a video with 1 million views on TikTok explaining that the Titanic was a hoax, and they think, oh, okay, it's a hoax. So that's that. This is my vague understanding of how young people access information. So I don't know. But I just for the record, I never thought I was cool ever in my life. So
Oh, I didn't really ever think I was cool either. I guess like uh do I think I'm cool? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think with women it's like, do you think you're hot? And I never could figure out whether I was hot or not. And then by the time I was like, "Oh, I guess I was okay." I was like, a old hag, and I was like, I
yeah,
never, because I mean,
well,
I
because
just
that's
get so I never thought about being cool. Yeah, I seriously was like, "Am I hot? I don't know. I don't know if I'm hot." And then
well,
one
that's
day I
so
just
funny
turned around and I was
because
like, "Oh, I don't get my period anymore." Shit.
well,
I guess the answer is
I assume you
no.
remember that one of the very early websites was called hotornot.com,
Oh,
and you
yeah, I saw
upload
the social media. I hate that movie
the
so
social
much.
network. Okay,
Aaron
but you were
Sorkin,
probably,
he's Gen X. Is he Gen X?
I think he's probably older Gen X. Okay, but you like
If Aaron Sorkin is Gen X, I am literally going to kill myself. I think he
when
probably is. He's the
um
worst Gen Xer. Oh my god. Yes. I'll bet he's like
he might be young boomer.
1967.
Let's see.
No, I think he's like
He's 62. I
1967.
mean, he was born in
Oh,
61,
okay.
age
What a
62.
relief. Okay.
Young
Okay.
boomer. But
Okay.
okay, you saw
The Social
that in the
Network.
social network, Zuckerberg wants to knock off
Oh my god, I
Hot
hated
or
that movie
Not,
so much. I was sweating the entire
but
time I watched it.
hotornot.com became
Yeah.
popular when I was like 16 or 17, and
Yeah.
when we were bored, my friends and I would just like go through it, and rate it. So that was a way to
You're
like
canceled.
that was a way to like objectively, you would upload your photo and then the
Yeah.
crowd would say you are
Yeah.
6.3. And so
Right.
that question no longer, you could say, okay, well, everyone, the wisdom of the crowd has decided I'm 6.3 hot. And then you had to deal with that, I guess, in some way.
It's
But
horrible. I would have just died if I had been, gotta say die a lot. I would have been very unhappy if they had had that when I was that age.
right. And I mean, it probably still exists in some form, but it just mutated into like Instagram and posting
No,
selfies and
totally. I
stuff.
mean,
So
right. I mean, I see people now like I've never put I mean, my idea of like putting a selfie on Instagram is like I don't know the other I would never like put a selfie on Instagram to be like, don't I look amazing? And people would just be like, you're old. Like, no. I did actually I was in a hotel room in St. Louis the other day that had unbelievable light and it made me look so young. And I took like 800 selfies and sent them to my boyfriend and like 3 of our friends. And my best friend from college wrote back, he's like, where are you? He's like, you look hot, bitch. He's like, wherever you are, you should move there. And I was like, thanks. That's nice.
I mean,
But
yeah,
anyway, but I just send them to like my friends. I
everyone's
would
hotter in the
never post them.
Midwest. That was a joke from 30
Well, no,
Rock,
I was just
created
by
by a Gen
myself
Xer.
though. No, I did feel I was just in the Midwest. I have to tell you, I did feel a little bit hotter. I'm not kidding.
No,
I was in St. Louis and I was like, I might be a 8.1 here. Even I don't know.
I believe the line from 30 Rock was everyone's a model west of the Monongahela. And it's okay, so that's something. Okay, we've gone long. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Let's see. I want to tell you my favorite joke that I've ever heard that a Gen X person said that I don't think is necessarily a Gen X joke, but it goes into like what we're saying. It relates to what we're saying. So when I was in college, this woman that I knew was older than me and went to the same college as me. She lived in New York and she was trying to get a friend of hers to move to Latvia. And her friend was like, Kristen, I'm not moving to Latvia. And she's like, no, we have to move to Latvia. We have to move to Latvia. And she was like, I'm not leaving New York I'm not moving to Latvia. And she's like, give me one good reason to move to Latvia. And this girl was like, okay, well, in New York, we're poor and we're dogs. And in Latvia, we're rich and we're babes. And I feel like that is really like a super Gen X-y joke that like now, if you said that, people would be like, Latvia, like they'd be upset about Latvia, even though like I don't really know that Latvia is a place that we need to like sort of protect. And also like saying
no,
that
you'd be
you're
accused
ugly.
of being a colonialist, and
right?
you would
Exactly.
be.
I mean, it may be like
objectifying
like
women
probably like
and-
possibly like rightly so, but I just always laugh at that.
Okay, if people want to follow more of your work, where should they go?
The real Sarah Miller .substack.com. So I have a Substack. And it's the real Sarah Miller, which is just a joke because there's so many Sarah Millers. And there's actually way more than just me.
Okay, so a link to that will be in the show notes. So the real Sarah Miller.substack.com. And that's also your handle on.
Oh, on Twitter, I'm Sarah Loves Callie.
Oh, Sarah Loves Callie, right? Okay, so that
which is a really horrible handle, but I didn't realize when I made it that it was like going to be public. I just thought it was for me, and then
well, that
really
classic Gen X solipsism.
No, totally. Well, wait a minute. Wait, why is that solipsism?
I don't know. I
think it's just like stupid that I didn't know. I know now the word stupid's bad. Oh God, I sound like Pamela Paul. Okay. It was silly of me.
That's the point. That's the point. When you realize you start sounding like Pamela Paul, that's the point to kill yourself, I guess. I mean, there's really no other.
There's no other, or just go out and start shoplifting at will.
Okay. So Sarah, Thank you for taking the time. So
Thank you. It was really fun.
The article was in the New York Times. The link will be in the notes. Hate Gen X, get in line behind a Gen Xer. People can follow the show. It has its own Twitter account, Culturally DET. and, rate, review, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. Good luck editing.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.